start off, I'm going to define two functions. F of x is 3x minus 4. G of x is 2x squared minus 1. If I ask you to find f plus g of 0, what do you think that means? Exactly. We're going to put 0 into both of them, so it replaces the x, and then we're add those answers together. So if I put 0 into f, that's 3 times 0 minus 4. So we get 0 minus 4 or negative 4. If I put 0 into g, 2 times 0 squared minus 1. So 0 minus 1 is negative 1, and negative 4 plus negative 1 is negative 5. Okay, so when you have an operation like adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, if I'm giving you the x, you put it into both of them and see what you get. So you guys do f times g of negative 2 for me. Alright, we have some problems here. So I'm plugging negative 2 into each of them. So if I put negative 2 into f, 3 times negative 2 minus 4. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Negative 6 minus 4 is negative 10. If I put negative 2 into g, so 2 times the negative 2 squared minus 1. Negative 2 squared, that's 4. Times 2 is 8, minus 1 is 7. Then this is times, so we have negative 10 times 7, or negative 7. Okay, so just make sure you watch the operation. The previous one was plus, f plus g. This was f times g, so we were multiplying the answers. I could also ask you to do f minus g or f divided by g. Okay, you just plug the number into both and add, subtract, multiply, or divide your answers. I want to do the same thing, but instead of giving you the functions, I want to give you graphs. All right. First thing I want is f minus g of 0. That means we have to find f of 0 minus g of 0. F of 0, this is saying the x value is 0, find y. F is this upside down parabola, so if I'm looking at the point on this parabola when my x is 0, what is the y value of that point? 4. Minus g of 0, so when x is 0, tell me what y is if you're on function g. G is the absolute value one. So that y value is 0, and then I ask you to subtract, so 4 minus 0 is 4. When I say f divided by g of negative 2, so I need f of negative 2 divided by g of negative 2. So on function f, when my x is negative 2, what is the y value? 0. Divided by, on function g, when the x is negative 2, what is the y value? 2. And 0 divided by 2 is 0. B. Same thing, but I gave you a table. So when I say f of 0 minus g of 0, remember 0 is the x, so I'm looking here. What is the y value of f? minus, when x is 0, what's the y value of g? 4. So negative 1 minus 4 gives me negative 5. If I ask for f of negative 2 divided by g of negative 2. So when x is negative 2, f is equal to, and g is equal to, can we divide by 0? No, so this is undefined or no solution. Alright, I want you guys to do C. So I'm showing you different ways we can see representation, or the functions represented. We can see the tables, we could see a graph, or we could see the equation. So I want you guys to do f of 0, or f plus g of 0, and f divided by g of negative 2 for those equations. So when I say f plus g of 0, that means you have to do f of 0 plus g of 0. Okay, f of 0 means I go to function f and I replace my x with a 0, and we get 4. G of 0, if I go to function g, replace my x with a 0, we get 0. And 4 plus 0 is 4. The next one, f divided by g of negative 2 means put a negative 2 into f, put a negative 2 into g, and divide them. If I put negative 2 into f, we get negative 6 plus 4, negative 2. If I put it into g, I get the opposite of the absolute value of negative 2. The absolute value of negative 2 is 2. The opposite of that is negative 2. So negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1. Alright. We did better that time. Do you guys feel like you could evaluate functions if I gave them to you like that? So the next thing, I could ask you to do function operations without giving you a number to plug in for x. So just keeping it in terms of x, coming up with a new expression. But I wanted to give you a chance before we did one of those to practice reading the graphs, because this is sometimes the harder part for people. So why don't you guys take a second. We'll do the first one, then I'm going to have you try a couple before we switch into ones where I'm not giving you numbers. When I say f minus g of negative 2, that means I find f of negative 2 times g of negative 2. Okay, f is the line. When I say f of negative 2, that means find y when your x is negative 2. So if I go to my graph, when my x is negative 2, the y value of this one is negative 3. Okay, times g of negative 2. Here's my g. When x is negative 2, what's the point on g? No solution. There isn't one. So if that happens, the whole problem is just no solution, because function g didn't exist there. Okay, you guys try b and c. See if you can come up with those values for me. times g of 1. That means the x value is 1. So the y value of f is 3 times the y value of g is 1. And 3 times 1 gives you a 3. F divided by g of 0. So when x is 0, the y value of f is 1. The y value of g is 0. Can you do 1 divided by 0? No. Can't have 0 on the bottom, so that's no solution. Alright. Are we okay with reading these graphs? So let's keep working with our functions. F of x is 3x minus 5. G of x is x plus 4. We're going to find each of these things and give the domain like we were doing yesterday. Alright, so I said f minus g of x. So the difference is I didn't give you a number to plug in this time. When I look at that, if there's no number, I'm just thinking this is telling me I have f of x minus g of x. I don't have a number to plug in, so f of x is the full expression, 3x minus 5, minus g of x is x plus 4. If you're going to subtract those, what do we have to do? Distribute the negative through. And then we can combine like terms. So 3x plus negative x would be a 2x. Negative 5 plus negative 4 is negative 9. If I asked you for the domain of that, remember we talked about domains yesterday. Domain is asking you what can x be? And we had two things to worry about. If you have a fraction, what cannot happen? Right, you can't have 0 on the bottom. So if x is on the bottom, we have to look at what made it 0. And if we have like a square root, what do we have to worry about? If you have a square root, if we had negatives under the radical, remember it gave us imaginary numbers, so it had to be greater than or equal to 0. We don't have a fraction. We don't have a square root. So what's my domain? All right. B. What's the operation this time? Multiplication. So we have to take f of x, which is 3x minus 5, times g of x, which is x plus 4. And then if you want to multiply those things, you just FOIL. So we get 3x squared plus 12x minus 5x minus 20, or 3x squared plus 7x minus 20. So if there's no numbers to plug in, our final expression still has variables. All right. Can you tell me what the domain of that would be? No fractions, no radicals, so domain is still everything. Okay. C, f divided by g. So f is 3x minus 5. divided by g, which is x plus 4. I am not asking you to actually like do long division or anything here. We set them up as a fraction. That's the answer I want here. Okay, you don't have to actually divide it out or anything. When I look at the domain of this, what do I have to think about? Yeah, it's a fraction, so the denominator can't be 0. So x cannot be negative 4. So then our domain is everything except negative 4. So it'd be negative infinity to negative 4, union negative 4 to infinity. No, because we're saying not equal, so we want to make sure it's a parenthesis there. Any questions so far? Final thing that I want to go over today is something that's called the difference quotient. This actually comes up a lot in calculus. It's a calculation that you have to do a lot there. In pre-calc, we really just need to be able to evaluate functions. So if I ever wanted you to find the difference quotient, I would give you this formula. I would tell you what it is. So I'm not just going to expect you to memorize it. But f of x plus h minus f of x over h. This is a calculation involving functions that we should be able to do. When we do it, we're going to kind of break it into 3 steps. First, we'll find f of x plus h. Okay, that means you're going to go to your function, you replace your x with x plus h. Once we get that, we can do that answer minus f of x. So we'll get that. Once we have that answer, then we do the whole thing. We divide by h. So we'll break it into a 3-step process. So we are going to find the difference quotient for f of x equals 2x minus 3. And I already have the 3-step outline, what we're going to do. So first step, f of x plus h. That means you go to your equation, and every time you see x, you are replacing it with x plus h. What would you do at this point? Distribute the 2, so we get 2x plus 2h minus 3. Okay, that's all we can do. There's no like terms. We have x's and h's. Part B. F of x plus h minus f of x. F of x plus h is what we just found. So we're taking the answer we just got minus, what's f of x? So it's the answer we got in part A minus the original problem. What would you do at this point? And then when you combine like terms, positive 2x and negative 2x cancel. Negative 3 and positive 3 cancel. So all we get is 2h. Part C. F of x plus h minus f of x. What is f of x plus h minus f of x? 2h. That was the answer we got in part B. Divided by h. And what does that give me? 2. So my final answer here is 2. That's our difference quotient. Right? So 3-step process. If you're just looking at the original equation, it looks kind of daunting. But if you break it into steps, it's not too bad. The first step is going to be your longest. Every step from there, it should get simpler. Did I lose anyone on this?
I understand what we did in the middle step. Well, middle and second, last step.
Okay. F of x plus h minus f of x. That's what we calculated in part B. So I took my answer from part B to replace it. The two,
Well, how did you take the f of h out? How did you crossed out the 2x and minus 3?
so you're talking up here.
Yeah.
Because it was a minus when I distributed my negative, I went to combine like terms. Positive 2x and negative 2x. When you add those together, you get 0. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. So those things cancel out. Yeah.
If there's two h's, then like usually we subtract, why would it just be h?
You're thinking when it's h squared over h. That's when you subtract exponents. This is 2 times h divided by h. So the h's cancel out. Other questions? Let's try another one. Bless you. All right, another difference quotient. My function is negative 2x squared. All right, so when I say f of x plus h, that says go to your equation. Here's my function. And replace the x with x plus h. I probably should have said f of x equals this. Alright, so is everyone okay with what I'm doing right here? If we have x plus h squared, what does that mean? We have 2 of them, we have to FOIL. So that's x squared. Plus xh and plus xh would be 2xh plus h squared. If we distribute the negative 2, we get negative 2x squared minus 4xh minus 2h squared. All right. Before I go to part B, are there any questions on part A? Part B says f of x plus h, but what is f of x plus h? That's what we just calculated. Minus, what is f of x? Just that original. Okay, if we have minus a negative, that would become positive. Negative 2x squared and positive 2x squared cancel. So all we're left with is negative 4xh minus 2h squared. Part C. F of x plus h minus f of x. That is what we found in part B. And we got that answer to be negative 4xh minus 2h squared. And that whole thing is divided by h. So what can we do? We can take an h out, but we have to take it out of every term if we do that. So we cancel this h, one of these, and this one. So we took an h out of everything. When we do that, we are left with negative 4x minus 2h. Alright, so it's using functions And basically your answer to the previous part is where you begin on the next part. Questions there? This is where I am stopping today. There is a Math Excel assignment open. You don't know how to do all of it yet, or unless you remember things from last year. You learned it last year, but the Math Excel, the questions that you can do for sure now, I'll write up here. This Math Excel, if you look, it isn't due until Monday because we are spending the rest of the week on this section, so it won't technically be due until the end of the section. But you can get started. So those are the questions that you could do right now. We will be working